Tom watched his soon-to-be wife walk down the aisle. She was a sight to behold. He could not help remembering the first day he saw her. He was out with his best friend Mark when Mark thought he saw someone he knew. Mark called out to her and it turned out that he was right. There she was, Cindy, walking towards Tom and Mark just like she was walking towards Tom right now. His thought back then had been, what a beautiful girl. And right now, he could not help thinking how much more beautiful she had become. Tears streamed down his face as he watched her in that beautiful gown. He loved the gown on her. It fit her so perfectly, accentuating every curve on her body. Cindy seemed to walk in slow motion as she moved towards Tom. She could see the tears on his face. He had always been an emotional man. Just one more thing about him she hated. Behind her veil, Cindy plastered a smile so wide it looked fake. And it was. Cindy wondered for the millionth time if she was really making the right decision. She so much wanted to back out, to get out of here, to follow her heart's desire, but she had to stay. Cindy reminded herself that nothing will change. She could still do as she pleased. She could still have it all. She wanted to delay this as much as she could, so she made her walk as slow as possible. As Tom watched Cindy, he saw the hesitation in her steps. He had taken his time to know her, to care for her, to be everything he thought she wanted and more. And still, it was not enough. This broke Tom's heart. He did not know if he could do this. It felt like he had to make a choice between self-love and loving her. Tom remembered the day he proposed. It was Mark's encouragement that had made him hasten his decision. Tom had been sure he loved Cindy from the very first time. From that moment, he knew that this would be his wife. And so when Mark kept pushing Tom to propose before some other guy snatched Cindy away from him, he decided it was time. He had planned to take her away for the weekend, then propose to her, but then that Wednesday morning, he felt so nervous about the ring, so he drove to his best friend's house to ask him if it was grand enough for the queen of his court. He never knocked as he had his own key to Mark's house, and when he let himself in, he wondered if perhaps he had interrupted his best friend. He could hear a woman's laugh. It sounded familiar. He walked towards the kitchen where the voices came from, and to his surprise, he saw Mark and Cindy together in the kitchen. Mark was behind Cindy, too close, beyond what was considered normal for friends. Mark and Cindy looked startled when they saw Tom, but Tom did not seem to question anything. Cindy regained her composure, got out of Mark's grip, and ran to Tom and hugged him. Without prompting, Cindy said that she needed a friend to talk to the previous night, and since she and Mark had been friends for as long as anyone could remember, she had opted to go talk to him. And then it had gotten so late she had to spend the night there with Mark. Thinking back to that moment, Tom realized how stupid he must have looked. He did not question Cindy's story, or the intimate position he caught them in, or even why she would not go to talk to Tom instead, who was her boyfriend. And in that moment when Cindy hugged Tom, he remembered why he loved her so much. She was perfect. When the hug broke, Tom went down on his knee and asked Cindy to marry him. Tom should have seen the look on her face. It was not the look of a girl that was excited to get married. She almost looked heartbroken, and Tom thought it was because he caught her by surprise. Then Cindy turned and looked back at Mark, who after a few seconds of holding eye contact with Cindy, gave her a little nod. Cindy then turned back to Tom, blinked, put a smile on her face, and said yes. Tom was happy. This was one of the happiest days of his life. And so that weekend, they went away to celebrate their engagement. Tom felt a hand on his shoulder, bringing him back to the present. It was Mark that had touched him to give him a handkerchief, and Tom realized that tears were still freely falling from his eyes. He gave Mark a tight-lipped smile as he took the handkerchief, then caught Bob's eye, one of his groomsmen, who gave him a questioning look. He understood what Bob was trying to say, and he was not sure what he wanted to do. Cindy had reached the altar at this point. She looked at Tom, then at Mark. She wished that roles were reversed, that she could get her happily ever after with the one she truly loved, that their family would be complete. At these thoughts, her hands instinctively went to touch her stomach. It was his baby, yet he pawned her off. Why could he not be the wealthy one? It was their baby, and Mark should be the one marrying her, not Tom. She loved Mark. She had always loved him, but stupid Mark was only using her, and now she was forced to marry Tom. She could not help hating Tom, even though Tom would be every other woman's dream. Every other woman, just not her. She hated how trusting he was, how caring he was. He hated how much Tom loved her because she wished all this were coming from Mark and not stupid Tom. Tom was handsome, but she did not want to wake up to Tom's face. It was Mark's face she wanted to see every morning. Why couldn't Tom not see the way she looked at Mark? Why couldn't Tom see how much she avoided his touch but always seemed to gravitate towards Mark? A little part of Cindy was, however, grateful that Tom had been so blinded by his love for her, and now she would have a nice, loving husband for herself and a wonderful dad for Mark's child. An even smaller part of her felt sorry for Tom, but a big part of her felt that Tom deserved it for being stupid and blind. Besides, if Mark used her, it was all Tom's fault. If Tom had not had it all, the success and the wealth, then Mark would not have been jealous of Tom, and Mark would not have hurt her feelings. Maybe Mark would have fallen in love with her, but she knew she was lying to herself. Mark was always going to be a player. She could not help feeling stupid for giving in to Mark's advances. Cindy had already agreed to be Tom's girlfriend, and it was when she had called to tell Mark thank you for introducing her to Tom that it had all begun. Cindy felt her veil being lifted. She was so lost in thought she could not help being a little startled. She looked at Tom and saw him smiling. But then she looked at Mark with bleeding eyes, hoping that Mark would stop all this and whisk her away so that they could go start their family and raise their child together. Mark saw the look on Cindy and thought, how pathetic. Did she really think that he, Mark, could fall for her? Then she was as stupid as Tom, if not more. And speaking of Tom, he deserved this. Oh, how much Mark hated him. They had met in high school, as they were classmates. Mark felt jealous of how effortless it was for Tom to get good grades. They would spend their time together, but when the results were out, Tom would always be top of their class. Their classmates also really liked Tom because of how good-natured he was. Mark loved attention. He was always loud and liked boasting, and when the other boys learned that he was a liar and manipulative, they generally avoided him, but not Tom. The other boys always wondered why Tom was still friends with Mark because those two were polar opposites. To top it all, Tom came from a wealthy family. You would think that Mark would be grateful to Tom for never withholding his things from Mark. Mark saw this as a threat. Mark felt that Tom was just showing off. He hid his hate well enough. They kept in touch all through college and even now as adults. Mark always seemed to leech off Tom, asking Tom for money and favors and never once being grateful. But Tom was too nice or just stupid and he did not see all this. What Mark did not realize was that Tom saw all this, but he felt that he was privileged enough to share with Mark. It was just money after all, and his family had more than enough. He did not mind sharing with Mark. Mark had grown to want everything that Tom had, and so when Cindy told him that she was now Tom's girlfriend, he knew he had to have her. Tom did not know Cindy as he had gone to a different college. So Mark had seduced Cindy behind Tom's back, and naive Cindy had fallen head over heels for Mark once more. And now, there she was, pregnant for Mark and marrying Tom. Mark thought that Tom deserved the betrayal. Mark realized that even though he had all the excuses as to why he hated Tom, the real reason was that he just felt inadequate compared to Tom. Mark wished he had Tom's life, a wealthy family, being loved effortlessly, an overachiever. He felt average while Tom looked glamorous. Every time he stood close to Tom, he felt lesser. No one compared Mark to Tom except Mark himself. And so every chance Mark got, he tried to live as Tom. If Tom liked a certain dish, Mark loved it too. Mark wanted to date the kind of girls Tom liked. And he had gotten away with a few of Tom's girlfriends who broke it off with Tom soon after out of guilt. Not Cindy though. Cindy was easy because she had already caught feelings for Mark way before she met Tom, since the college days. And now she had the chance of being with Mark. She took it, but she could not leave Tom, who was devoted to her wholly. Do you, Cindy, take Tom? As the priest asked Cindy these words, Mark came back from his thoughts and waited to hear her response. Tom also looked at Cindy's troubled face. She was not hiding how she felt anymore. Tom wondered if Cindy would say yes, but if she did, would he? Would he now that he knew the truth? Were it not for Bob, Tom would still be the laughingstock. He felt angry that his so-called friends knew all this and still kept quiet. But would he have believed them? If Bob had not shown him the video he recorded of a drunk Mark bragging about his escapades with Cindy, would he have believed them? If not for Bob's intervention, he might not have decided to hire a private investigator. If he had not seen the text and the pictures, would he have believed anyone? Sadly, even with all the evidence, he still found it hard to believe that his best friend could hate him that much. He had done all he could to be there for him. He now realized that it did not matter how much you tried to be there for someone. If they wanted to, they would still betray you. And Cindy? What was her excuse? So, Tom looked at Bob and gave him a nod. Phone in hand, Bob pressed a button and now it was out there for everyone to see. On the big screen right in front of the church where a few moments ago the bride and groom could be seen, was now a PowerPoint presentation of Mark's and Cindy's betrayal. Everyone watched, surprise evident on their faces. Tim gave one last look at both Mark and Cindy. then took the microphone and announced that the wedding was off, but the reception party was still on. Tom walked out. His only thought was that he wished she had confessed prior to this. Then maybe this would have been avoided if only she had confessed.